Welcome into Candlestick Chronicles, a 49ers podcast on the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I'm Kyle Madson. I don't know when we start recording. Chris Biderman here, as always. And before we dive into some 49ers red-hot preseason finale preview action, let's talk about the official uniform of Candlestick Chronicles, Chris. That's Lamb Chops. Lambdlestick Chronicles.
I had a 4 p.m. meeting. Jetted home, and the first thing I did when I got home before hopping on this podcast, which we're recording now at 6 p.m., changed into my podcasting uniform, threw on some Lamb Chops sweat shorts, perfect for the air conditioning during the hot summer months. But you know what it is. Super comfortable, super high quality. We love Lamb Chops. We love all of their clothing. Go to sglambchops.com. Use promo code Candlestick20 to receive 20% off your first order. And follow them at sglambchops on Instagram and X, formerly Twitter. Shout out to Lamb Chops. We appreciate their support. We're looking forward to their fall line. We know their summer line is absolute fire, as the youth might say. And check them out. sglambchops.com, promo code Candlestick20.
I don't know that the youth says fire. I feel like that's an us thing. No cap.
Is it?
Dead ass, for real.
Oh, God. Okay.
All right, let's talk about the 49ers. Here we go. We're almost there, Chris. The preseason's almost over. The worst part, look, I don't want to hate on the preseason. Oh, I kind of do. But I don't begrudge anyone who's like, hell yes, preseason football, I need this in my life. And that's your bag. I love that for you. Watching a preseason game is just a slog. It's just because there's the interesting stuff in the first 18 to 25 minutes of game action. And then it's just, and I'm so glad it's almost over.
It's tough to watch closely at the end of games because it feels like all the competition for, roster spots, at least on good teams, really feels like it happens in the first half. Right. And it's pretty deliberate in terms of what's actually happening.
Yes.
Because, the way Kyle Shanahan has operated has mostly been, him prioritizing practice and, joint practices, scrimmages with other teams more so in the preseason. And the preseason has just kind of been an opportunity for guys who aren't going to make the team to get the vast majority of
it.
But it does feel like, I think what's interesting about Friday is it does feel like this year more than years past, there are still jobs up in the air going into the preseason finale, which typically it's been, for the Niners, like this can't finish soon enough. Like they already have everyone that they like. They already know exactly who's going to make the team. But right now, it does feel like there's competition at a few spots. I don't know that there's necessarily competition at starting spots, but I do think when you look at the back end of the roster, there's still some things to be determined on Friday.
Yeah, there's a lot. So there's a couple things I want to get into with Friday's game, but there's 4 positions I think where there's actual competition, like roster spots, potential rotational roles, starting jobs, like up for grabs. The first one's cornerback, and corner's interesting because there's a starting job open. We know Diamador Lenore is going to start. We know Trevarius Ward is going to start. But then that third nickel spot, that important nickel spot, is I think still pretty wide open. And the more I think about this, or the more I watch, and the more we see this team in games, and the more we see reports coming out of practice with the wonderful 49ers beat down there at the SAP Performance Center, I kind of think Renardo Green's going to win that job and just be the starting nickel out of camp. It really feels like things are trending that way.
Yeah, it seems like it. Like it seems like he's made the most of his opportunity with Isaac Yiadom sidelined with that ankle injury. It sounded like Nick Sorensen was asked about that today, and he sort of hinted at, I think if you read between the lines, it sounded like it would still be Yiadam's job, but like things change pretty quickly, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
if his ankle injury persists and he has to miss any more time, it's going to be hard to give him the starting job when he hasn't practiced for, I don't know, 3 weeks or whatever it'll have been
Mm-hmm.
come week one,
Yeah.
when, Renardo Green is getting every single rep with the first team and doing it at a relatively high level. On top of the fact, like, you kind of have a lot invested in Renardo Green's development as a second round
Yeah.
pick with Diamador Lenore and Charvarius Ward slated for free agency next offseason.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you feel pretty inclined to get him starting reps. If it's close, like, it's one of those situations where if it's really close between those two guys, you probably just give it to Renardo, because you do feel like his ceiling is higher as a second round pick as opposed to a street free agent
Yeah.
who might have been an afterthought to other teams.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably right. I'm going through right now because I obviously Diamador Lenore and Chavarius Ward are locks. Renardo Green is a lock to make the team. His role TBD. But then after that, I think Yadam is on the team, or Yadam. I think he's on
Yeah.
the team. And then let's say they keep 6 cornerbacks. There's Darrell Luter, there's Samuel Womack, and there's Rocky Sin. So there's really 3, and I guess you can throw Chase Lucas in there if you want. So there's 3 or 4 guys competing for 2 more spots. I'm Ambry Thomas was having a rough go and then got hurt, so I don't think he's going to make it. So it's really those 4 guys then competing for 2 spots, which is one of the reasons Friday night's so interesting, because I think for 4 quarters, cornerback play is going to matter in terms of who actually makes the team.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think if I were to guess like how it's all going to shake out, I would say it's going to be Charvarius Ward, Diamador Lenore.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm with you in that. I think Renardo Green, like, even if he's not starting, I think he'll be the guy who plays more games than anybody else in the slot, even if he's not starting early on in the season.
Mm-hmm.
And then I do think Darrell Luter has a really good chance to make it. I wonder if Rocky Sin's going to be the guy, the odd man out, sort of like the veteran,
Mm-hmm.
the veteran journeyman who's been on a bunch of teams. Like, I think I kind of read into him playing a bunch of snaps in the preseason, like, hey, guy, like, be our innings eater here.
Yeah.
But because, sometimes guys like that need the reps to endear themselves to other teams with their film.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious to see. I think Samuel Womack is a really interesting guy, not because he's been awesome or anything, but I think he does have versatility in that he can play inside and outside, which it's that'll never hurt your chances. But also he's kind of been a core special teams guy,
Yeah.
and I wonder, when you're talking about this part of the roster, obviously as a huge football guy, Kyle,
Yeah.
when you're talking
Mm-hmm.
about this part of the roster, you have to be able to contribute on teams.
1,000%.
And I think Samuel Womack can contribute on teams. So it's definitely going to be interesting. Like, Luter making it over Rocky Sin, I don't think would surprise me at this point.
Yeah, I'm looking at Yassin's snap counts on special teams, and he only played from 2020 through 2022. That's 2 years with Indy and 1 year with the Raiders. He only played 142 special team snaps across those 3 years. He played 149 last year with Baltimore. So he's played on special teams, but that's not been his bag necessarily as a player, whereas that's something that Samuel Womack has done for the 49ers reliably for 2 full seasons now. And he's a player who at one point won a job as a starting slot corner for this defense. So I think I lean Womack and I think I lean Luter. In part because of special teams again. Luter last year was on IR for a big chunk of his rookie year, and then when he got activated, he immediately started playing on special teams and started contributing there. So I think those are the 2 guys, and yeah, I think Yassin is just going to kind of be, maybe he clears waivers and lands on the practice squad as a veteran there, but I don't. If he's going to make the team, it's as a starter, and I don't think he's going to be the guy there with Yadam and Green playing as well as they have.
Yeah, and to your point about Luter, like it does feel like the coaching staff is high on him. Like for
Yeah.
him to be a rookie and to start on IR and then to like get in the mix right away.
Mm-hmm.
Like this wasn't a Cam Latu situation where they're like, "No, we're not in a hurry to get you back. You can just hang out on IR and we'll give you a redshirt season." They're like, "No, we're going to get you on the roster with a little bit of urgency here and you're going to be playing football for us." Down the stretch of the season. Like I do think that was notable. So yeah, I think so. Lenore, Ward, Yadam, Green, Samuel Womack, and Daryl Luter.
Yes, I feel good about that.
And,
Green, Lenore, Luter, Ward, Womack, Yadam. Yeah.
I think that's a good group. Like I think that has a chance to be like a really good group. You have potentially a quality vet free agent addition in Yadam and Green, who might be a starter as soon as next season, cutting his teeth a little bit. Just overall, like one guy we haven't really talked about who I think might be poised to like make that jump that like, and I'm not saying he's going to be an all pro. We remember like Fred Warner was like a really solid rookie when he was first, and then he was like
he was a rookie.
Oh, he went from like really like solid rookie to like, oh, this guy's like a Pro Bowler, like all pro type guy.
Yes.
I don't know that Jair Brown's going to be an all pro, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if like during the season we're like, oh, maybe Jair Brown's made that jump that like kind of like Talanoa Hufanga took, right, his second season, where it's like, oh, this is a dude now. Like he might actually be. If I told you
Jair Brown had 6 interceptions and made the Pro Bowl, would you be shocked?
No, not that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like to me, he feels like a candidate on the defense to be like one of the next dudes, which is kind of my point here is that I'm really optimistic about the Niners secondary.
Yeah, me too.
And I think a lot of it starts with, I mean, there's still questions with the strong safety spot. And like, I think there are reasons to be optimistic about Malik Mustafa. We have no idea what to expect from Talanoa Hufanga when he's going to be back. But I think George Oda might be a fine placeholder in the meantime. Or, you know, if Mustafa has to get in there, I don't think that's the worst thing in the world either. But like, I think overall the secondary has a chance. And I texted you guys this in the group chat. I think the secondary has a chance to be the best secondary that Shanahan's had since he was hired.
Yeah, depth-wise, I think for sure. The Richard Sherman, Emmanuel Mosley, K'Wan Williams group is pretty good.
That was good, but you remember like 2019... Akello Witherspoon was still bouncing in and out of the lineup. Like that opposite corner spot was still a problem.
Yeah, that's true. You're right.
So I just think the possibility's there. I'm not staking the claim yet. I just want to put that out there that I'm really optimistic about the Niners secondary.
No, but I don't think it's that. I don't think that's that crazy because if Lenore takes even a small jump this year, he could be a Pro Bowler. We already know that Trevarius Ward is an All-Pro caliber player. He's an All-Pro last season. And if they both play at that level, if Trevarius Ward has the same type of year and Deommodore Lenoir takes a leap in his fourth season in a contract year, and then Renardo Green steps in and is just at that point, you just need a solid, he doesn't even have to be great, but just a solid slot corner. There are teams that would kill to have 3 decent corners, much less 2 Pro Bowl / All Pros and a league average starter.
Yeah.
So
and
I
this
don't.
Is probably...
And real quick, that's with Yadam, who's coming off his best season of his career, who could also conceivably wind up starting.
Yeah, and I think the broader point too, not to get too far off track. If the Niners' defensive line isn't as dominant as it's been in years past, they're going to need the secondary to be really
1,000%.
good.
1,000%. Which would be if they go back to the Super Bowl and win it this year, and their defensive strength is their secondary, that would be kind of wild.
Yeah.
It'd be really nice.
Considering all the resources and all the rhetoric with, the most important thing we do is win up front with our defensive line. It's like, nope, actually the secondary's balling out. That's why you're there this year.
John Lynch just sitting up there like, the secondary playing well. Interesting.
Well, it would make sense given last point. That would make sense given what the Chiefs have done and given what the Chiefs did last year in particular.
Yeah, no doubt.
The Chiefs secondary was incredible last year,
which
is essentially why they won the Super Bowl. That and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes. That's also that. Yeah. Did you know he threw a pass behind his back?
I heard about that over the weekend. Yeah, I heard about that.
Hard to miss it. I was watching live when it happened, and I was like, fuck, social media is going to be unbearable. And sure enough, for 3 straight days. Linebacker. I kind of think they're going to keep 6 dudes at linebacker. I think Fred Warner makes the team. I'm ready to say that. Devondre Campbell. I think Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles is going to make the team. He's been lining up at the ones like all camp. So I imagine he's going to be the Sam linebacker, and if he's not, he's at the very least a key reserve and a core special teamer. That leaves 3 spots for Jalen Graham, D. Winters, Tatum Bethune, and Curtis Robinson. And that's not that I'm sitting here going, wow, that's 4 all pros. How do they make this decision? But I think that's 4 guys who could all conceivably at some point in their careers either start or contribute to a really good linebacking core. And they're all going to need to play. I think we're headed to.
I don't mean to bring up past wounds for you. I think we might be headed to a Jonas Griffith situation here.
Fuck.
Sorry to
told you not to bring that up.
But I think we might be headed towards somebody at the back end of this linebacking group getting traded.
Mm-hmm.
Because very few, if any, guys who aren't going to make a 53-man roster get traded, right? Often they just get released and they go back to the practice squad or whatever. But the Niners have traded a couple guys who have been proven to be NFL players, who they just didn't have room for. And it feels like that's kind of where we're headed with this linebacker battle.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel strongly about Jalen Graham versus Tatum Bethune. I think Tatum Bethune could end up being a really nice 7th round pick.
I agree.
But you know what? Jalen Graham also looks like a really nice 7th round pick, all things considered, right? Maybe they just decide, Curtis Robinson, Curtis Robinson has gotten a ton of run. He's been around in the system. He's been primarily the backup Mike linebacker throughout training camp, and he contributes on special teams, but maybe they're just we think he's kind of like a league average linebacker at best,
right?
Where they think Graham and Bethune maybe have more upside.
Mm-hmm.
But I even think Robinson might be somebody that's some team badly needing a linebacker who can also play special teams that runs a similar system.
Mm-hmm.
Niners would be let's just do a 7th round pick swap for this guy to wherever,
Sure.
But I think Bethune and Graham are good enough to keep around just purely for the upside, because it does feel like those dudes could develop into starters. And it feels like they just love Flanagan Fowles for special teams. They like the progress they've gotten from Winters. And the other case you can make it for a real big shakeup is do you just want to give one of these young dudes reps over Devondre Campbell? But it doesn't seem like that's the case.
No, not at this point. The thing I always try to come back to with this is maybe Curtis Robinson, and maybe you're right, maybe they make a trade, but maybe Curtis Robinson just gets cut and easily clears waivers and just goes to the practice squad. Because this is a player that we've been sitting here watching, and it's in our scope of things we're paying attention to. And so the idea of oh my God, if you can't let Curtis Robinson go, when in reality you could probably get him back. And if not, you're really cutting a special teams guy. I mean, I was thinking about this today. There were like 3 players from last year's camp that I went, oh my god, they can't let this guy get away, and then they did, and they got signed to other teams. I think there was an offensive lineman. I think there was a cornerback, and I can't even remember their names. And I was like, you just can't. Remember the kid from Texas?
Yes. They're okay. I have a little mini rant about this because I can't remember their names either. The
Elm Manning was the offensive lineman. That's definitely the offensive lineman.
Yeah. Saying a team cannot get rid of your third string so-and-so because they won't make it to the practice squad and they'll land elsewhere. 99.7% of the time, it doesn't matter at all. And people get so tied up in August, like, oh, you can't let that guy go. You got to keep him. It's like, no, you don't. You'll be just fine.
You don't.
Like, there's like 3 of those dudes every year. But more often than not, guys get released, and it's like, oh, he went unclaimed. Shocker.
Yeah, right. Or they got claimed, and they spent half the season on the practice squad and then got cut.
Right. Like, I can't even think of a difference maker for the 49ers that's like, that they've signed or lost that's been like an amazing player. Who was the corner? Yeah, but that was they screwed up his injury situation. And that with the new rules this year, that probably wouldn't have been a thing.
Yeah.
Because there are new rules this year where you don't have to hold a 53-man roster spot for an injured guy.
Right.
If you give him the return designation at final cuts. That's a new rule.
Yes.
They didn't have that. But who's the corner out of Penn State who played for
Tariq
Washington?
Castro-Fields. Yes.
So he was cut, but I think he was hurt in camp.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't a situation where like he balled out in the preseason and they just like didn't have numbers. It was like he was hurt and then he just couldn't get back. I think.
I feel like Tariq Castro-Fields has a brazy spider graph.
Probably.
No, never mind.
Pulling it up.
It's not that crazy. I lied to you. I'm so sorry. I know how much spider graphs mean to you, and I just lied.
You just tried to hurt me after I brought up Jonas Griffith. That's fine.
I'm like, look at his spider graph, Chris.
No, but the point stands. Like there's not a scenario, a likely scenario where you're like, oh man, losing this guy is going to cost you the Super Bowl when it's like a third string special teams guy.
That's it. So I do think they wind up keeping 6 linebackers. And again, that'll be interesting. That'll be fun to watch. I'm assuming Fred Warner will play a little bit, and maybe Devondre Campbell plays a little bit against the Raiders on Friday.
I don't think Fred will play.
Not even a series?
With a foot injury.
No, that makes sense.
He's been dealing with a foot injury. I don't know.
But still, watch it. The second level is going to matter for 4 quarters tomorrow, I think.
Yeah. I'm with you.
Last couple that I'm interested in. You had a thought about the rookies that I think is a really good one that I want to get to. Last couple, if you're a real football head and you want to dive into the tight end battle, Eric Saubert v. Jake Tunges is something to watch, I think. I think they're going to keep 3 tight ends, and I think it'll come down to those 2 guys, Saubert and Tunges. Any thoughts?
They've kept 4. They've typically kept 4, and so I don't know. I don't have any strong feelings on it. I probably should have stronger feelings on it, but I just don't on the 4th tight end battle, or if they keep 4. But Kyle Shanahan loves to have extra tight ends, and maybe it's a situation where if it's Tunges that doesn't make the team, that he gets back to the practice squad, and they're not really worried about it.
Hey,
but, I think they keep 4.
This is going to be a bit just for people who listen to this podcast. If they cut Jake Tunges, I'm going to lose my mind on the internet. I'm going to just destroy them. them being the 49ers for letting him get away.
And if you listen to the podcast and enjoy that type of bit, just like be all up in Kyle's mentions, agreeing with him and calling for John Lynch's job.
1,000%. It's like the Trent Williams holdout, whatever. The Brandon Ayuk debacle, fine. But cutting Jake Tunges? Are they tanking?
I'm sick of this.
And then running back, interesting note, the Niners are saved for Christian McCaffrey healthy at running back again for the first time, it feels like, in all offseason. Isaac Arendo's back in practice. I think I think Elijah Mitchell makes the team still, unless he gets traded. That's kind of a potentially interesting wrinkle. But I think
that's not a terrible thought.
Thank you. Elijah Mitchell, I think Christian McCaffrey makes it. And then Jordan Mason. And then I think they keep a fourth, and I think it's going to come down to Garendo or the undrafted rookie Cody Schrader.
Yeah, there's some interesting decisions to make. Can Garendo prove to be valuable in one preseason game, or would they be better off just giving him a redshirt season to try to get healthy? That's a fair question.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about them trading Mitchell, but that does make sense. It's kind of a Jeff Wilson situation, right?
Yeah, kind of.
Like,
I mean, especially if Jordan Mason is past him on the depth chart in their eyes, then what's Elijah Mitchell doing?
Yeah, because he's probably not playing special teams. Because Jordan Mason, the reason why Jordan Mason made it over, I forget who it even was last year, but Jordan Mason
it was Trey Sermon and Ty Davis Price.
Right. So he was active on game days because of special teams.
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
So that's worth noting. Yeah, let's talk about the rookies before we get out.
Yeah.
So I say this while fully understanding that Ricky Pearsall hasn't done anything yet because he's been on that shelf with hamstring and shoulder injuries. And it might be that he's just like not a contributor until midway through the season because of that. And depending if Brandon Ayuk comes back and when that happens, of course. Between Renardo Green, Dominic Pooney, Malik Mustafa, and Jacob Cowing, it already feels like a really solid draft class, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
Which is like exactly what they needed. And again, I want to point out it's August 21st and they haven't played a regular season game.
Right.
But if Dominic Pooney is your starting right guard who's like good as a rookie, which it seems like he's going to be, and if Renardo Green is at least good enough to be in the mix to start as a rookie in a cornerback group that already has two really good players in it, and Jacob Cowing can just come in and like you feel like you might actually be upgrading the Ray McLeod spot, that's about as good as you could expect. And that's not even, Malik Mustafa might end up being a starter like next year.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's probably the plan.
These types of draft classes, like go back to, the 49ers have drafted a lot of their star players, right? With the exception of Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey, they've drafted basically all of their star players. And 2019, it was like the story of the team was you had George Kittle, Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, Deebo Samuel, Dre Greenlaw, all on rookie contracts. That's been the formula for success for this team. It's just been like drafting dudes and having really productive draft classes. And obviously they hit a lull, particularly with the Trey Lance situation. But like if they keep on this trajectory with Green and Pooney and Cowing and whoever, like the other guys in this class, it just feels like this could be a really solid class for them, which would be huge because they're going to be losing a lot of talent next offseason, in my estimation. Yeah,
man. If you're getting that trio, Green, Cowing, and Pooney, with Mustafa, and if Pearsall, even if he's not a 1 or 2, even if he's just a really quality third receiver, and you're getting 3 or 4 starters or 3 or 4 starters and a contributor from one draft class, like that's the kind of stuff that extends Super Bowl windows. That's and I'm not super sure about a couple of their other more recent classes, but you make up for it if you have one draft where you find 3+ starters. So I'm with you. Again, fully acknowledging that it's August 21. But the current trajectory of those players as they begin their careers, their arrows are all pointing up right now, which is better than pointing down, in my estimation. Subscribe, rate, review.
I mean, but you go through it like, the Niners in 2018 yielded 3 starters, and that wasn't like an amazing class, but it's like Fred Warner, Mike McGlinchey, DJ Reed, and you had Richie James and some other guys. Like that's not the worst, right? 2019 was the one, really.
Yeah.
And that was a draft class that like turned them into, what they became with Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel, their first 2 picks. And then Mitch Wishnowsky, of course. I don't know why I didn't mention him earlier. And then Drake Greenlaw was also in that class, right? But
crazy.
Like, if you get 2 really good players or 3 really good players, starters in a draft class, that's a home run. And we're looking at like a scenario where if Pearsall's a contributor with Green, Pooney, Mustafa, and Cowing, like you're feeling pretty good about that. And that's not even like, we talked about Bethune earlier, the linebacker. If that guy's if that guy's on your team for 4 years and he's either like playing as a backup, if he's a special teams guy and can fill in, like that's a W2. So obviously very early, not one regular season game has been played, but I think this rookie class is checking the boxes of, with the exception of Pearsall, where you want them to be early on in their careers.
I would tend to agree. The 2020 class, same deal. You get Brandon Ayuk, who's obviously a star, but then you get Colton McKivitz, who's now your starting right tackle. You had Charlie Werner in the 6th round for 4 years, and you get Juwan Jennings in the 7th round. Yeah. If that's the type of draft this is, where you get a star, a really good contributor, and a average starter, with another guy who's going to contribute for 4 years the way Werner did, like that's a big deal. So I'm with you. Good start for this class.
2022 class looks awful, and you go through it, and you're like,
really tough.
Ooh, tough scene. And then you're like, oh, 262 Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
Like, all right.
Well,
not a great draft, but man, that's some Sephora quality lipstick on that pig.
Yeah, Drake Jackson, Ty Davis Price, Danny Gray, their first 3 picks in that draft. 0 of those players are going to be on the 53-man roster this year.
Yeah.
Yikes.
And Spencer Burford might not either. We'll see.
Yeah. Nick
Sam
might
Wolbeck
not either.
Might not. We don't. Yeah, we don't know.
Kalia Davis out for half the year with a knee thing. But hey,
it might be Brock Purdy's only one.
If it is, then that's totally fine, because if you find your franchise QB in a draft, you win it regardless.
And you're paying him $800K.
Wow. When he got asked by Eric Branch about being famous now, and he's like, and I don't make a lot of money. Well, I make a lot of money playing football.
I would take $800K.
Yeah. You want to swap, Brock? We record Mondays and Wednesdays.
I would definitely trade salaries with Brock. Yeah, even on his broke ass rookie deal.
Broke ass boy.
All right, that's all we got.
We're done.
We will talk to you guys later.
Probably after the final preseason.
When we're going to record the next pod. It is
sometime this
football
weekend.
Season is starting up in the Sacramento region. There's some high school games to be played.
Who's Granite Bay got this weekend?
You know what? I'm not sure, but I know Folsom's got Long Beach Poly.
Oh, here?
Serious, yeah, in Folsom in a serious battle
on Friday
of California Powers. Yeah, going head to head with Niners Raiders.
Damn.
So, we will we'll report back later
go to that
on
instead.
that. Hey man, a fulsome Long Beach Poly pod might actually do some numbers.
Legit, not even
feed.
doing a bit.
Maybe not on this feed, but somewhere else people would tune into that. So
the Joe Davidson show, Long Beach Poly v Folsom High pod is doing numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyway,
all right, subscribe to our various things wherever you get your pods. We're on YouTube, youtube.com/@Candlestick Chronicles Podcast, or just search Candlestick Chronicles on YouTube. We're the first thing that pops up. Thanks everybody for listening and watching, and we'll talk to you next time.
See ya.